Alhamdulillah, salatu salam ala Rasulillah. Today, Alhamdulillah, is the last day of Ramadan, and it's been a very unique Ramadan for sure. Some of us will probably remember it for generations to come. So, I think it's really a time to reflect upon uh, the things that we usually take for granted: the community spirit, the gathering in the masjid, Taraweeh, collectively in a big gathering, iftar gatherings in the masjid, and so many other things that we could not benefit from in this blessed month, that when we finally do get round to having them, we should have a renewed appreciation for them. Today, inshallah, I'm going to be doing the tafseer of a surah in Juz Amma, which is Surah Aadiyat, which is surah number 100. And it's one of the most profound and very powerful surahs that, when you are looking at the translation, it's very, very powerful, and it gives a lot of beautiful imagery, and it gives a huge lesson to us as human beings. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He takes an oath. The first 5 ayahs of this surah, they are spent in taking an oath. And whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath by something, it is for us to reflect upon that thing, to pay attention to that thing. Otherwise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need to take an oath. Allah, if He tells us something, if He wants to inform us something, He just says it. And of course, Allah does not lie. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells the truth always. So why does He take an oath? Not because we won't believe Him. Like humans take an oath when we feel that somebody might not believe what we're saying. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath so that we pay attention to the thing that He's taking an oath for. So in this surah, He takes an oath by horses. Now, horses for centuries or millennia even have been part of the Arabian culture. And even to this day, they are part of the Arabic culture. And this is a hadith which is confirmed by the culture of Arabia and the Middle East, and even the former Russian states, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. Those places also, they give horses a lot of reverence and respect. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Al-khaylu ma'aqudun fi nawasiha al-khayr ila yawm al-qiyamah." The horses, they have khayr and goodness tied to them until the day of judgment. They have goodness tied to them until the day of judgment. And venturing on, the Prophet ﷺ said, what is that goodness? Al-ajru wal-maghnam, he said. Reward and spoils. So reward can be financial reward in this world, and of course it can be the reward of the hereafter. If a person uses the horse for good, for promotion of good, for striving in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that person will get ajr for it. And if it was used for warfare and so on, then the spoils that came from that warfare, it was because of the effort that the horses put in. Al-ajru wal-maghnam. And to this day, the horses are a huge multi-billion-dollar industry. The thoroughbred horses, they have their lineage traced back generations and hundreds of years to a particular horse that is sired. Sired means like mated with females of the same kind of background, of the same pedigree, and then from that the horses are born, and they basically can be sold for millions and millions. And in particular, the Arabian horses, they are the most expensive. They are very, very. You can tell it's an Arabian horse by looking at its features and its face, if you will. It's a very slim kind of face that it has. So what the Prophet ﷺ told us 1400 years ago still rings true, that the horse, it has a reward in it, it has goodness in it, it has benefits in it, and this will continue until the Day of Judgment. So in this surah, Surah Aadiyat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath by horses, even though the horses are not mentioned by name. And this is again very, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sometimes very mysteriously uses wording, but we derive from the wording around it what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to understand. For example, in the first ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالْعَادِيَاتِ ضَبْحًا. I swear by those horses that are running and they are making a panting sound. So this word ضبح in Arabic, it is unique to horses. No other animal makes this sound. And some Mufassirin actually have mentioned that this surah could be about camels too. But this opinion is rejected by the view that the word al-dabh is the panting sound that a horse makes when it is running. A snorting sound, if you will, or a neighing sound. وَالْعَادِيَاتِ ضَبْحًا. So in this first ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes an oath and He says, I swear by those horses that when they run, they make a panting sound. And it really, this gives us a reflection of the Arabic language, that even if few words are used in the Arabic language, they give a huge meaning. So وَالْعَادِيَاتِ is just one word, but it means wa is wa of qasam, I swear by, and al-adiyat means those horses that are running and basically traversing great distances. And dhabha means, and while they're running and they are out of breath, they make this panting sound. وَالْعَادِيَاتِ ضَبْحًا. The next verse it says, فَالْمُورِيَاتِ قَدْحًا. And again, so much meaning, but so little wording in Arabic. فَالْمُورِيَاتِ قَدْحًا. And they make sparks fly. They make sparks fly. And how is that? When the hooves, which have horseshoes on them, they hit rocks and stones, that hitting of the metal on the stone, it makes sparks fly out of the hooves. So if you can imagine again the vivid imagery that these two verses are putting in the reader's mind. وَالْعَادِيَاتِ ضَبْحًا. I swear by those horses that are running and they're making a panting sound while running. فَالْمُورِيَاتِ قَدْحًا. And when their hooves are hitting the rocks, the sparks are flying out. This is a very powerful imagery. فَالْمُغِيرَاتِ صُبْحًا. And they attack in the morning. So in the old days, the Arabs, they used to think it's cowardly to attack a person at night while he's sleeping. So they used to, whenever they used to fight in broad daylight. فَالْمُغِيرَاتِ صُبْحًا. They attack early in the morning. فَأَثَرْنَ بِهِ نَقْعًا. And when they are running towards the enemy and their hooves are hitting the ground, and collectively these horses are going into the thick of the battle, what are they doing? فَأَثَرْنَ بِهِ نَقْعًا. They are making dust fly everywhere. So if you can imagine again, a collective group of horses, they are running together and they are running towards the enemy. And we see this in movies and drama serials where like horses are running in sand and the sand is blowing on all directions. So فَأَثَرْنَ بِهِ نَقْعًا. So going back to the beginning again, وَالْعَادِيَاتِ ضَبْحًا. I swear by those horses that they are running and they're making a panting sound. وَالْعَادِيَاتِ ضَبْحًا فَالْمُورِيَاتِ غَدْحًا. And when their hooves are hitting the ground, it makes sparks fly. فَالْمُغِيرَاتِ صُبْحًا. And they attack in the morning. فَأَثَرْنَ بِهِ نَقْعًا. And when they attack collectively, the dust is flying everywhere. فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ جَمْعًا. And when they see the enemy, the group of the enemy in front of them, they go into the thick of this crowd. فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ جَمْعًا, meaning they don't display any kind of cowardliness and fear. The master tells them, get into this thick of this battle and don't turn back. These horses, they go into the thick of the battle. فَوَسَطْنَ بِهِ جَمَعًا. So just imagine this huge imagery that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is putting into our mind. And then after 5 ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings what's known as Jawabul Qasam. Innal insana li rabbihi lakanud. Indeed, the human being towards his Lord is ungrateful. So, what's the connection here? Whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He takes an oath by something, first He brings the oath, and then after that He brings what's known as the jawab of the oath, or the ending of the oath. So if you can imagine, if I say, I swear by Allah, this is the oath, and then what I say after that is what's known as Jawabul Qasam in Arabic. So this ayah, the 6th ayah, Innal insana li rabbihi lakanud, indeed the human being is ungrateful to his Lord, is the Jawabul Qasam. So what's the connection between these horses and this Jawabul Qasam, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares that the human being is ungrateful? What's the connection? The connection is simply that look at this horse, how obedient it is to its master, and how night and day it will run. It will go into the thick of the battle. It will run in the heat, in the cold, and while it's running, it's exerting itself and panting, and it's running so hard that sparks are flying out of the hooves and dust is flying everywhere. But why is it doing it? Because its master, the rider, is telling him to run and go. So this horse does not stop. But on the other hand, look at the human being. The master of the human being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, tells him, get up to pray Fajr. He displays laziness. His Lord tells him, don't eat this. He eats it. His Lord tells him, fast in the month of Ramadan. He doesn't fast. His Lord tells him, don't look at this. He looks at it. His Lord tells him, spend your money in such a way, and he spends it in the opposite way. His Lord tells him, earn your money in this way. He earns it in a haram way. So this is what we are as humans. We are so ungrateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that every action of ours shows disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Innal insana li rabbihi lakanud. Completely different to that horse that, shows by his actions how loyal he is to his master. So we really need to reflect upon these verses and reflect deep down within ourselves who we are and how we are in relation to our Creator, how we obey Him or disobey Him. وَإِنَّهُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ لَشَهِيدٌ. And indeed He is a witness of that Himself. So we need to dig deep down into ourselves and look into our hearts and think about who we are as people, as slaves of Allah. are we obedient to him or not? And are we as obedient as the horse is to its master? And then on top of that, the next ayah says that despite being so disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَإِنَّهُ لِحُبِّ الْخَيْرِ لَشَدِيدٌ, indeed his love for khair is severe. So what is khair? Khair means goodness, and it means wealth. I mentioned earlier on in this month that whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes wealth in the Quran, He always uses favorable terms, especially when that wealth has been earned in a halal way. He refers to it as fadl, and in this case as al-khair. So the human, despite being disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, despite disobeying Him night and day, he still expects Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him, and Allah still continues to give him, and that human being loves that wealth that he's been given. وَإِنَّهُ لِحُبِّ الْخَيْرِ لَشَدِيدٌ. He loves that wealth. And he loves all the goodness that Allah wants to give to him, and does give him. But again, despite Allah giving him, he is still disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah takes it back to the Day of Judgment. What's going to happen? In this world, we kind of are neglectful of what we're doing. But at the end of the day, أَفَلَا يَعْلَمُ إِذَا بُعْثِرَ مَا فِي الْقُبُورِ وَحُصِّلَ مَا فِي الصُّدُورِ إِنَّ رَبَّهُمْ بِهِمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ لَخَبِيرٌ. Is he not aware that when the graves are opened up, meaning the people in the graves are resurrected, and they are taken out of their graves, and they are standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَحُصِّلَ مَا فِي الصُّدُورِ, and what is in the heart is going to be taken out. What is in the hearts is going to be derived and is going to be in front of us. There we cannot show any kind of hypocrisy. Whatever is inside us will be on display for everyone to see. If we are hypocrites, if we don't have Iman, and we've been hiding kufr all of our lives, that's going to be out there for people to see. And if we've harbored bad thoughts about people, and if we've entertained misgivings about people, and have been jealous of people, and have hated a person, and all the illnesses that were in our hearts, they're going to be taken out and they're going to be put on display for people to see. وَحُصِّلَ مَا فِي الصُّدُورِ إِنَّ رَبَّهُمْ بِهِمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ لَخَبِيرٌ. Indeed, their Lord will be on that day ever aware about them. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will know everything about the human being. Nothing will be hidden from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this basically sums up this surah, and it's a very, very profound, a very, very beautiful surah. And this is only one of the aspects of tafseer that the mufassirin have given. There are actually other tafsir too that some scholars have given. I won't go into all of them, but this really is a very, very powerful surah that we need to reflect upon and think about ourselves in relation to our Creator, and our obedience to Him, and our gratitude to Him for the blessings that He gives us. This is what we derive from this surah. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us tawfiq to understand and practice what is being said and heard. Jazakumullahu khairan.